Las Vegas, 1975. Backstage at the Desert Inn, the air still hums with the last resonant chords of a charity duet. Elvis Presley and Frank Sinatra sharing a stage for the first time in years. Strings hum in the wings. A lone stagehand wipes sweat from his brow. Under soft amber lights, only a few linger. The pianist packing up, the dresser straightening Sinatra's tie, and 7-year-old Lisa Marie Presley, perched on a velvet stool, eyes wide with something more than wonder. Elvis leans against the mirrored wall, guitar case at his feet, a rare smile creasing his tired features. But Lisa Marie fidgets, her small fingers trailing across Sinatra's cuff. She tugs gently, her voice a trembling whisper in the chairman's ear. Sinatra stiffens, his trademark poise cracking for an instant, then, without warning, sweeps the child into his arms. No one moves. Elvis steps forward, and when Frankie looks up, his famous cool facade has melted into something raw and vulnerable. A single tear escapes each legend's eye. What words could a child speak to disarm two icons? Words unseen on any script, words so honest that they demand every heart in the room to break and mend at once. The Cadillac's engine purred steadily as it rolled onto the sun-baked highway bound for Las Vegas. Inside, Elvis Presley sat behind the wheel, dark-lensed sunglasses hiding eyes that had grown tired from the relentless drumbeat of recording sessions. Beside him, 7-year-old Lisa Marie stared out at the passing desert scrub, head resting against her father's shoulder. "Elvis, what is fame?" she asked softly, her voice barely above the hum of the engine. He glanced sideways at her, surprise flickering beneath his calm exterior. He had expected chatter about slot machines, showgirls, maybe a question about the bright neon lights. But fame? He leaned back, searching for an answer that wouldn't sound hollow. "Fame," he said carefully, "is when people know your name and listen to what you do." She turned toward him, small brow furrowed. "But why does it feel empty sometimes?" His jaw tightened. He fought the tug of memory, crowded arenas, thunderous applause that dissolved the instant he stepped off stage. "Because," he replied, voice hushed, "it's not enough to hear me sing. I need someone to hear my heart." The question hung in the cab's close air. Lisa Marie looked at her lap, where her fingers twisted the hem of her dress. Elvis released the steering wheel for a moment, tapping his fingers to a silent rhythm. He changed lanes, the Cadillac swaying just enough to remind him he was driving. "Daddy," she whispered, eyes wide, "when you pray, does God hear you? Even if you don't know the words?" He caught the edge of her gaze in the rearview mirror, a child's trusting belief, unfiltered by cynicism. His throat tightened. He searched for the right words. "Yes," he said finally. "He hears." She nodded slowly, as if filing that answer away for later use. For a long stretch, they rode in companionable silence, punctuated only by the wind through rolled-down windows and distant calls of ravens overhead. Elvis thought of his own mother, Gladys, teaching him to bend a knee in the kitchen of their Tupelo home, her voice firm yet tender. He had learned that prayer was both a plea and a confession. As the neon pillars of Vegas shimmered on the horizon, Lisa Marie tilted her head. "Daddy, promise me something?" He felt his pulse quicken. "Anything, baby. Promise you'll always come home and tuck me in. Even if you have to sing for thousands, you'll never be too tired for me." His chest tightened with remorse. So many times he had flown before dawn, returning long after her dreams had started, unable to fulfill that promise. He reached back to grasp her little hand through the gap between seats, thumb brushing her knuckles. "I promise," he vowed, voice catching. No matter how far I go, I'll always come home to tuck you in." She smiled hesitantly and turned forward, eyes bright with relief. Elvis thumbed the transmission into drive as the Las Vegas skyline grew nearer, its glittering promise tempered by the weight of the promise he had just made. In that moment, father and daughter found a fragile accord, fame pressing from behind, faith guiding their journey together. As the Cadillac glided beneath the arching lights of the Strip, Elvis braced himself for the night ahead. Two legends sharing a stage, countless expectations awaiting. Yet in his heart, a quieter reckoning had begun, one shaped by an earnest child's plea and a father's vow to be more than a star. Tonight, the curtain would rise, but his greatest performance would be the keeping of that promise when the lights finally dimmed. The Desert Inn's showroom was a hush under the violet glow of evening spotlights, the air redolent with orchestral strings, tuning, and the sweet, smoky haze of aged bourbon. Backstage, only a handful of figures moved in the soft luminescence. A dresser adjusting Sinatra's tie, a pianist running final scales, and Elvis's own small entourage whispering among themselves. Yet, at the center of it all stood two men separated by reputation's unspoken gulf. Frank Sinatra, the chairman, and Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll. Their musical worlds had seldom collided, yet tonight, charity for wounded veterans would mark their first joint appearance in years. Elvis paced by the mirrored wall of the green room, guitar case slung over one shoulder, his crisp white jacket stretched over broad shoulders, but his eyes betrayed something deeper than nerves. A shadow of insecurity he had carried since the early days when critics dismissed his style as a passing fad. Despite album sales and sold-out arenas, the man he most respected remained Sinatra, whose voice had once been the standard to which all crooners aspired. Lisa Marie perched on the edge of a velvet-upholstered love seat, legs swinging as she watched the backstage ballet. She wore a pink party dress, her curls pinned back with rhinestone clips that caught the light, scattering tiny reflections around the room. Though barely 8, her gaze was far older. She sensed the tension, the currents under polite smiles. Frank Sinatra entered the room first, flanked by his valet and an arranger. He moved with effortless grace, the city's spotlight armoring him like a well-tailored tuxedo. Sinatra paused upon seeing Elvis, offering a small nod that spoke volumes, acknowledgement laced with friendly wariness. Elvis returned the gesture, stepping forward. "Frank?" Elvis began, voice rough from the day's vocal run. "Glad you could make it." Sinatra offered a grin that creased his eyes. "I wouldn't miss it, kid," he replied, voice smooth like velvet draped over steel. "Charity's a good cause." Elvis braced himself, then glanced at Lisa Marie. She caught his eye, tipped her head toward Sinatra, and mustered a shy smile. Frank's gaze drifted to the little girl, curiosity softening his features. He crouched, eye level with her. "Well, hello there, young lady," he said, voice gentle. "What's your name?" She lifted her chin. "Lisa Marie Presley," she answered, tone solemn as though auditioning for a role far beyond her years. Sinatra's brow rose, genuine surprise sparking in his dark eyes. He straightened and addressed Elvis. "She's got your poise," he observed. "Been watching rehearsals?" Elvis winced. He had practiced for hours, but the dread of that rehearsal stemmed not from songs but from Sinatra's silent judgment. "A bit," he admitted. "She likes music." The arranger cleared his throat. "Frank, 15 minutes to go on stage," he reminded. Sinatra nodded, offering Elvis a final smile. "Break a leg, Presley." Elvis watched Sinatra stride away, the valet smoothing the back of his jacket. He turned to Lisa Marie, whose gaze remained fixed on the departing legend. "What did you say to him?" Elvis asked, curiosity mingling with protectiveness. She exhaled slowly. "I asked him, 'When you sing, would you tell them to say something about Daddy? Because I hear you pray sometimes, and I think you need to know someone believes you're heard.'" Her words landed with the gentle force of a quiet storm. Elvis's breath caught. He remembered the prayer he'd whispered before leaving Memphis. "God, protect my girl, and help me be the father she needs." He had not expected her to eavesdrop on his nightly devotions, nor to conceive a plan to enlist Sinatra's help. Yet here she was, extending that small, fierce faith to a man known for his own doubts. Backstage doors creaked open, revealing the dimly lit corridor leading to the stage. An usher appeared, gesture urgent. Sinatra's show was moments away. Elvis squared his shoulders and knelt beside Lisa Marie. "Sweetheart," he whispered, "that was brave of you." She tilted her head. "Did he say anything?" He shook his head. He had been too stunned, caught between paternal pride and a musician's reverence. "I don't know. I'll find out." He lifted her into his arms, cradling her as though she might dissolve in the glimmering backstage light. The smallness of her frame contrasted with the moment's enormity. For a fleeting second, Elvis felt both the weight of his daughter's trust and the burden of fulfilling her request. He stood and carried her to the edge of the stage opening, where the next act's curtain quivered in anticipation. Through the slit of heavy velvet, he glimpsed Sinatra, a solitary figure at the microphone, silhouetted against the roaring chandelier lights. The audience drifted to hush as Sinatra began to speak. "Ladies and gentlemen, I've sung for many causes and met many remarkable people tonight. But it's not often a 7-year-old reminds me of what music is truly for." Elvis's heart pounded. He recognized the pause that followed, the collective breath intake. Sinatra continued, "A young lady asked me to say something about her daddy, Elvis Presley, because she's heard his prayer when no one else was listening. I'm here to tell him, and all of you, that sometimes the strongest voices pray in the quietest moments, and that is the loudest music God ever hears." The showman's voice wavered with sincerity. The audience exhaled into tears and spontaneous applause, an ovation more profound than any seeking spectacle. Elvis found himself frozen at the wings, invisible yet wholly seen, as Sinatra returned to the music without another word. Tears blurred Elvis's vision. He pressed Lisa Marie's small hand against his cheek, feeling her calm pulse against his frantic heart. She nestled closer, her bravery now the catalyst for his catharsis. "Thank you, Frank," Elvis whispered, though the man had already slipped into the wings to brace for his set. The crowd's fervor surged behind the curtain, but backstage remained a sacred hush. His wife Priscilla appeared, concern bright in her eyes. She took Lisa Marie gently, brushing a kiss on her forehead. Elvis stood motionless, letting the weight of Sinatra's words sink into his bones. In that moment, father and daughter, legend and child, found their shared truth. Sometimes the most profound performances happen away from the lights, fueled by faith and a daughter's fearless love. And as Sinatra's silhouette retreated into the glow, Elvis realized he had been given a gift greater than any standing ovation. A gift born in the silence between two icons, delivered by a child who believed her voice could move mountains. The showroom lights dimmed to an iridescent hush as Frank Sinatra's final notes drifted into silence. He lingered at the microphone, shoulders squared, framing the moment with a solemn grace. From his vantage point backstage, Elvis watched, breath caught in his chest. The air felt sacred, as though every attendee sensed they were bearing witness to something far beyond a mere evening of entertainment. In the quiet aftermath, the stage manager approached Sinatra with a prompt to continue the set. The chairman turned slightly, as if re-anchoring himself in the familiar rhythm of show business, but his eyes swept past the crew into the wings, where a slender figure stepped forward. Lisa Marie Presley, her small frame illuminated by the soft glow of the green room exit. She wore a simple white dress, her curls tamed by a single clip, yet there was an authority to her posture that belied her 7 years. Elvis inhaled sharply and rose from behind the curtains. He had not expected his daughter to press beyond polite greetings, but Lisa Marie moved with purpose. Sinatra noticed her approach, the faint flicker of surprise crossing his features. He straightened, hand unconsciously brushing his lapel, and allowed her to take center stage alongside him. The audience waited, shifting in their seats. Cameras pivoted back into place, lights recalibrating for this unscripted cameo. The host, senses honed by decades on television, leaned in with a gentle smile and nodded at Lisa Marie. She raised her chin, speaking into the microphone with astonishing clarity. "Mr. Sinatra," she began, voice steady, "when you sing, can you tell my daddy's story? He prays at night and sometimes cries because he thinks no one hears him. Could you say something so he knows? God hears him, and so do we." The words punctured the air with delicate force. A collective breath exhaled from those present. Cameras lingered on her, capturing the earnest plea etched on her flushed cheeks. Sinatra blinked once, then turned his gaze toward Elvis, who stood motionless at the edge of the wing. Elvis's eyes glistened with emotion, but he remained spectator to this exchange, powerless to intervene. The chairman's expression softened, the mask of the consummate entertainer melting away. He lifted his microphone, voice hushed yet resonant. Sometimes the strongest voices are heard not in grand halls, but in the quiet prayers of the night. To the man who stands in shadow off stage, your prayer is heard, not just in heaven, but in the hearts of those who listen. The words were a benediction. Elvis felt them settle deep within his ribs, spreading warmth and a fierce sense of recognition. He saw his daughter's hand flutter to her heart, tears glistening as she stared at the man who had once seemed untouchable. Sinatra motioned to the bandleader, who nodded once. A single piano chord echoed, and without hesitation, Sinatra sang, "When you walk through the storm, hold your head up high, and don't be afraid of the dark." His baritone rose, layering comfort over conviction. The orchestra joined, soft brushes on the cymbal, gentle bass notes, yet it was Sinatra's voice that carried the weight of reassurance. Lisa Marie's tears slipped down her cheeks, her small shoulders trembling with the depth of her faith fulfilled. Elvis, unable to contain himself, stepped from the wings, wiping a solitary tear from his own cheek. Elvis approached the stage, each footfall measured, the velvet drape parting behind him. The spotlight found him mid-entrance, face luminous with awe and gratitude. The audience rose as one, an uproarious salute that paled beside the tender hush of Sinatra's song. Elvis lifted his hand in acknowledgement, then knelt before Sinatra and his daughter. Frank lowered his head, sweat-damp hair catching the glare of the light. He extended a hand to Lisa Marie, lifting her gently into his arms for a brief embrace. Then, placing her back on her feet, he clasped Elvis's outstretched palm. The two titans of music exchanged a silent nod, respect forged by an unexpected alliance of compassion. The final chord faded into the hush. Elvis turned to Lisa Marie, eyes shining. He knelt and offered her his open arms. She leapt into them, and he held her tight, the sea of applause washing over them like a benediction. In that embrace, smiles broke free despite the tears. Two souls mending a father's worn heart through the unguarded wisdom of a child and the empathy of a fellow artist. After a suspended moment, Sinatra stepped back, raising his hand in graceful salute. The orchestra played a soft reprise as Elvis and Lisa Marie exited the stage together, the audience clapping in reverent recognition that some performances transcend the realm of spectacle to touch the very core of our humanity. Backstage, lights burned low. Elvis cradled his daughter in his arms. Priscilla appeared, rushing forward with relief softening her features. Elvis whispered into Lisa Marie's ear, voice thick, "You were so brave." She nestled closer. "We did it," she murmured. "He heard us." Elvis pressed a kiss to her temple. "Yes, baby. We did it." And in the quiet that followed, a silence more profound than any applause, they found a bond reinforced by tears and truth, carried on the wings of a star's greatest gift, the willingness to listen when the world finally spoke the language of the heart. The applause tapered to a gentle susurration as the stage lights dimmed, leaving only the soft glow of the footlights to carve silhouettes across the grand showroom. Cameras, once prowling like predatory beasts, eager for every angle of spectacle, now drifted away, their lenses still warm from capturing the evening's miracle. Backstage, the corridors were hushed, the usual post-show bustle giving way to a stillness heavy with reverence. Elvis could still feel the vibrations of Sinatra's final phrase echo in his chest, an affirmation tailor-made for the father who had lived so long in the shadow of his own legend. He stepped from the dim backstage passage into the soft halo of a lone exit light. Lisa Marie, small and radiant even in the half-light, was already there, standing atop worn carpet scuffed by generations of performers. She clutched a single white rose, the token Sinatra had placed in her hand before departing, petals fluttering like a promise. Elvis knelt before her, the hem of his jacket brushing the floor. He offered no words because none were needed. Lisa Marie reached out, her small fingers tracing the lines of his worn face, navigating the geography of a man she both revered and barely knew. He closed his eyes, leaning into her touch, finding in that moment more solace than any audience had ever offered. "Daddy," she whispered, voice tremulous yet resolute. He lifted his hands to cradle her waist, fingertips brushing the fabric of her dress. "Yes, princess," he replied, voice thick. She extended the rose and pressed it into his palm. "This is from Mr. Frank. He said, it's for the man who prays in the dark." Elvis inhaled, scent of fresh bloom mingling with the familiar musk of his own cologne. He drew the flower to his heart, holding it as though it were the key to her world. "I'll keep it safe," he vowed. She nodded, tears glistening in her lashes. Then, without hesitation, she threw her arms around his neck. He rose slowly, arms encircling her as if sealing a vow made in silence, to be the father she needed every single day. They remained locked in that embrace as the distant hum of crew wrap-up sounded somewhere beyond the curtains. Their world had contracted to the space between heartbeats. No cameras, no crowds, only the steady warmth of familial love. Elvis's cheek rested against her hair, inhaling the faint scent of child's shampoo. He felt, for the first time in years, entirely present. After a long moment, Elvis set her down, guiding her to sit on an overturned crate, a makeshift stage now repurposed for intimacy. He knelt before her, studied her small face by the soft glow of the exit lamp. He brushed a stray lock of hair behind her ear and whispered, "I heard you." She looked up, eyes shining with relief and wonder. "I know," she said, voice small and certain, "because you came." He nodded, a smile breaking through the tears. "I'll always come, baby. Always." Behind them, A stagehand passed silently, pausing at the edge of the light. He saw the king of rock and roll and his princess, no longer legends, but simply a father and daughter, at the end of a night that had changed them forever. He tiptoed away, respecting the sacred hush of their reunion. Elvis lifted Lisa Marie into his arms again, rose to his full height, and carried her through the corridor toward the awaiting Cadillac. Each step was deliberate, a pledge etched into the boards beneath his polished shoes. The world beyond those walls, flashbulbs, critics, endless demands, would still wait. But tonight, they would drive home as a family, their bond reforged by an unspoken truth, that the greatest performances take place off-stage, in the quiet embrace of those we love. As they stepped into the cool night air, Elvis paused to let her settle beside him. He closed the door, finger gently brushing the window to send her a final, tender wave. Inside, he started the engine, light sputtering across his resolute profile. Through the windshield, the showroom's exit stood like a portal between two lives, one defined by applause, the other by a rose, a tear, and the surety that some prayers are answered not in thunderous choruses, but in the soft certainty of presence. They drove into the Memphis night, father and daughter together at last, guided by a child's faith, sustained by a legend's humility, united by the silence that followed the most profound song of all. And in that silence, their hearts found the home they had been seeking all along.